is done. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Elizabeth and I have finally put together all the bookcases, all the shelves. I spent quite a bit of time just making sure that the top shelf was even so that I would have an even line and not just a little staircase. It took an hour and a half because it was not enough just to play with the screws at the bottom of the front legs. I also had to play with the ones at the back, so that meant I had to pull the bookcase, play with the leg, put it back, have a look, and then start over again. And of course the last bookcase refused to be at the same height than the others. It took an hour and a half. It's done, and now it's fun time. Now it's time to put the books on the shelves. And I have my books all in boxes just over there that you can't see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring each box here in front of me. I have a chair between the camera and myself, and the box will go on the chair, and I will just empty the books and put them on the shelves. I'm not necessarily going to present every book one by one because I've calculated that there will be room for about 750 books on these shelves. So 25 to 30 books per shelf multiplied by 24 shelves. So that would be a lot of books. And I'm just going to present the type of book, generally what they are. Perhaps I don't know. We'll see. And the way I'm going to sort the books on the shelves at the moment, they are all evenly spaced. I don't know if it's going to remain that way. It's going to depend on the size of the books. I don't think I have many oversized books. So the bottom shelf that is even lower than this that you can't see, there's another one at the bottom. That one is about 13 inches and the other ones are about 10 inches. So that's plenty of room for most oversized books. I'll put them at the bottom where you cannot see them. And that's it. And without further ado, let's start with the first box. So in this first box, we have books that I brought back from my parents' place, and mainly the books that my father bought when he was in a book club in the 1950s. So I made an entire video on the content of that box. So I'm just going to leave a link in the description box to that video, and if you want more details about the books, and I'm just going to place the books on the bookshelf. For the other ones, okay, the question is, am I going to separate the books I haven't read from the ones that I have read? Normally, my unread books live apart, but if I want them to have room on the shelves, I might as well plan for it. So I'm going to put some unread books on the shelves as space savers. And then I'm going to remove them and put them back on the pile of unread books with the holes that it's going to leave on the shelves. And that's going to give me an idea of whether I have too many books or not. So this is a bunch of nonfiction, so it's going to go at the other end. And some fiction, nonfiction, sorry, small books. So smaller books will be at the top because I think it's nicer, and bigger books will be at the bottom, again, because I think it's nicer. So that's one box empty. Box number 2, which is box 24. Ooh, the kids' book. Mafalda, all the books. So that one is too big to fit even at the bottom, so I'm just going to have to move the shelf up. So you can't see it, but the bottom shelf of this second bookcase has been raised by 1 inch. It's the best I can do. I tried different angles and you can't see anything. So I'm continuing with the same box, and the first book that I picked out of that box was a book that I'm not sure if I'm going to keep. So I'm going to put it on the bottom shelf of the third bookcase, and that's going to be the shelf for books I'm not sure that sort of are on the way out. If I'm lacking space, then they're out to make some space. Oh, living with books, decoration. Next, I have some of my music books. So yes, it's all of them, all of my music books. So they go in nonfiction. They're going to have their own shelf. So I'm just going to pick a shelf for the nonfiction, for the nonfiction books. So more music books. Next I have Shakespeare. Do I have do I have enough Shakespeare related books for them to have their own shelves? Maybe. Here, you can't see it. Oh, yep. Huh. Okay. Something negative about these bookshelves. The last book on the shelf, like the ends, it will be difficult to get it out because of the frame that is sort of going over like this, so there's going to be a book hidden behind it. Okay, something to keep in mind. So books that will not be used a lot go at the end of the shelf. Okay. Next is box number 26, which has been in existence for so long, I don't remember what's in it. And I need a knife to open it. It is still taped. Okay, so it's not just books, there's a lot of knickknacks in there too. So a couple of photo albums. So a book about Paris, a Spanish grammar, a couple of science books, oh, an art book, a bunch of magazines, crosswords. Here is one of my treasures. That's the 50th anniversary edition of Paris Match. So it's just like two giant collections of articles, the way they were published, when they were published. So it has not been rewritten for history, it's just the way they were published. So that goes on the shelf of the oversized books. Next, box number 13. Okay, so this time it's books, a lot of books, a mix of fiction and non-fiction, and from what I can see, mostly stuff that you've seen on BookTube. So mostly stuff I've acquired since joining BookTube, like The Bell Jar, The Daughter of Time. Okay. I'm going to put together the collections, like this is all the same publisher, so I think it would be nice if they were all together. Some travel books, they're going to be hidden. Well, travel books, like guidebooks, like Rick Steves' Best of Europe. I keep my old guidebooks, even though they are not accurate anymore. I assume that half the hotels and restaurants in this book don't even exist anymore. 2003. That's 22 years, including a pandemic. Like 3/4 of the hotels and of the restaurants in this book don't exist anymore. But I keep the book nevertheless. I'm sentimental like that. Okay, it's going to go on the shelf of the maybes, the books I may not keep if I run out of space. Now I'm wondering, am I going to separate by genre in the fiction section? I may do that. That's a book I didn't like, so it goes in the maybe. That's non-fiction about translation. If you're just listening to this, it's useless. I'm just showing the book and I don't bother naming the title. This is Georges Clemenceau, that's non-fiction, that's a keeper. Oh, PG Woodhouse. Okay, so random fiction is going to go there. Random fiction in English, perhaps I'll have a book of random fiction in French, a shelf of random fiction in French, perhaps. Okay, let's keep going, okay, so this is a mystery. Do I separate by language? I don't want to separate by language. I prefer to separate by genre. So mysteries, here, you're not a mystery, you're something funny. I don't know, funny, go there, I don't know. So book about translation, old guy, a very old guidebook, super sentimental. Let's Go France, the first travel I ever made, I left with this book. The first trip I ever made on my own, I left with this book. So completely updated and revised for 2002. So yeah, very sentimental. And this one is also sentimental. So it was the second one that I bought for the second trip that I made. Anyway, let's keep going. Classics. Boom. Do classics get their shelves? Maybe. Okay, like this. Non-fiction. biography of Louis XIV. The address book, that is going to be a maybe. That's something that I bought for the booktube prize, so I'm not super attached to it. This is a romance that I didn't like. Debbie May Comer, well, didn't like. It was okay, nothing more, so that's also going to go on the maybe shelf. Poetry. I don't have enough poetry for it to deserve its own shelf, so it's going to go with the classics. Oh, next. Oh, my favorite series, my favorite mystery series, so it's all the Jean-François Parot. The first book of that series in English is called The Apprentice of the Châtelet, The Châtelet's Apprentice, something like that, and it is, it's very good. I love it. So they get their shelves. Do they get, yeah, top shelf. Let's start like this. I can move things around if I'm not happy. So this one is the same collection as that one. So this is more a couple of non-fiction. And so more non-fiction. So this is about George Orwell in Cuba. So about the 1984 being translated, getting a new translation in Cuba relatively recently. And this is The Uses and Abuses of History by Margaret Macmillan. And then the rest of the box are all mysteries. So I have the rest of this Parot series, and I have also the Louise Penny series of the Armand Gamache. Not all of it, the first one isn't there, but okay, they'll go together. So they're not all in the same format, and they're not all in the same, like with the same look. So that was the early look, and that was the later look, and on the side they're not the same. But anyway, Louise Penny over here. And Louise Penny, I have some of them in English and some of them in French, so long live bilingualism. And maybe you'll notice, but books in French and books in English don't write the title on the spine in the same direction. So for the books in French, you have to tilt your head on the left and read like this, and for the ones in English, you have to go like this to read like this. Okay, so the box is empty. Box number 4. So what's in it? A bunch of random books. Yeah, really random. I think most of them date from after I joined BookTube, so again, most of them you will have seen. Ooh, Gilgamesh, another Gilgamesh, Jane Eyre, so classics. Classics are over here. Yeah, classics are over here. Like, I'll put the real classics at one end and the 19th century classic or more recent classics at another end. So BookTube prize book. I don't know if I'm going to keep them, so they're going to go on the maybe shelf. Louise Erdrich, Eden Robinson. Do I have a shelf for Canadian fiction? Maybe I should have a shelf for Canadian fiction. That Canadian fiction and random fiction. That. Okay. Classic Molière. There you go. Elizabeth Gaskell, Gone with the Wind, War and Peace, by different translators. I think there's a reason why I have both. So this one is translated by Maud, Louise and Elmer Maud, and this one is, so the Signet Classic is translated by Anne Dunnigan. So that's the reason why I have 2 War and Peace. 2 War and Pieces. I think I'm going to put Molière with Shakespeare. They go together. Some small books. Small size. Well, not small size. This Whose Body? In the same collection as these. A little souvenir from when I traveled south. How to Speak Southern. Laugh. The opposite of death. Nobody said laugh was going to be easy. So it's my best attempt at a Southern accent. A book by Joseph Boyden and one by Zadie Smith, which I absolutely love. So this one is The Embassy of Cambodia. It's a short story, so it's not really, it's a book, but it's a short story. Where am I going to put the very small books? The big books have their shelves, but the small books, I don't have many of them. Well, I'll put them with Shakespeare and then we'll see. So let's start with that. So let's not be too definitive. Let's remain flexible, open to the idea of moving things around after everything has been placed on the shelves. I'm probably going to move a lot of things around. So let's continue. Lost City of the Monkey God, that's very, very good. Into Thin Air, extremely very, very good. So that's nonfiction. To the Lighthouse in the same collection. That's 3 for $10. It says $6, but it's 3 for $10. So that explains why I have so many of them. I'll sort the nonfiction later. P.D. James, Death Come to Pemberley. It's not really good, it's just average. The Tigress of Forley, extremely very good. A biography of Caterina Sforziario de Medici. She had a full life. A list of books. French literature in 100 novels. So of course it is in French. It's the type of list that you read just to disagree with it. And I disagreed with this one. But anyway, and then Homeric hymns. So that's what I mean by classic, like classics from ancient Greece. I said they would go with Gilgamesh. Section of 3 for $10, Middlemarch. Do I have more in that collection that I can put together? Apparently not. So let's continue. So what do I have here? Oh, Shakespeare. So we have Richard II, Much Ado About Nothing. Muriel Spark, Aiding and Abetting. Not Russian, that one was very good. Trilogy by Elie Wiesel. Okay, darn. Night was non-fiction, but the other two were fiction. Where do I place them? And another Gilgamesh. So, Gilgamesh, Shakespeare, random fiction, and, well, I'm going to put it with the fiction, the random fiction, and because it's random. And I'll know they'll be together, so if I'm looking for night, I'll know it's going to be with the other two. A book about Shakespeare. Rob Roy. Pandora's Jar, which is non-fiction about mythology. A French-Canadian book that I absolutely love, so Royal. Romeo and Juliet, Death by Shakespeare. So that goes on the Shakespeare shelf. And Havana, this was good. I loved it. I made a video about this. So what do we have next? Some more P.D. James, so mystery. Hombre. So I'm not going to make a shelf just for westerns because it's the only one that I have. So it's going to go on the random fiction shelf. So this one is Tombe. So that one is translated from Spanish and it is from Cuba. And this is some non-fiction about life in logging camps. Let's continue. The House of Mirth, absolutely wonderful book, classic, goes there. Muriel Spark, which is a bit wobbly. Do I put it with the classic or with the random fiction? That's the thing, if I make a shelf for the classics, I have to separate authors. Classic and books I love. It's a bit going to be like that, I suppose. The random fiction shelf could also be books eventually I might get rid of. So that's non-fiction, that's a memoir about introverts. And this one is a memoir about growing up in the Indian reservation close to Quebec City. And this is a wonderful book about Ukraine. So this is For Want of a Fir Tree, if you want to read it in English. And that explains the origin of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia in 2014. However, the one that we have currently, so we are in 2025, and that's been going on for the last 2 years. Has it been 3 years? Anyway, for the last couple of years, it's basically the continuation of this. So if you want to understand a little bit more what's going on in Ukraine, I recommend this author, Frédéric Lavoie, For Want of a Fir Tree. I've decided to make a shelf of Canadian nonfiction, just to see where this goes. Julian Barnes, The Noise of Time, a historical novel about Shostakovich. 50 great short stories, so that's a classic, a bunch of classics. That's there. And so a couple of Canadian nonfiction by Thomas King and Thompson Highway, and here a novel by Thomas King. And finally, the last couple of books. Mr. Nightingale, Canadian fiction, and a biography of Elvis, which I haven't finished because this is volume 2. Oh, bookmark. I bought this one actually in Graceland. So when in 2016, I traveled to the south of the United States and I visited Graceland, which was awesome. I'm not a super fan of Elvis, but Graceland was awesome. And this is volume 2. I didn't realize that there was a volume 1, so anyway, it goes on the shelf. Let's continue with box number 5. In this video, I don't know which number it is. I didn't count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's the 6th. See, it's not in order. Okay. Ooh. Ooh. This is, with a few exceptions, a box of favorites. So there's a lot of romance and there's some Anne of Green Gables. And there's this poetry, handbook of terms, nonfiction. And there's also some Jane Austen. Do I put it, because it's the same collection as these ones that you can't see yet, because they're in these ones. It's the same collection, but it would make sense to put all of Jane Austen together. It would make sense. See, I have more Jane Austen here. Jane Austen, I love her. Okay, she gets her shelf. Jane Austen gets her shelf. Send it in. Sense and Sensibility. And Anne of Green Gables. Well, this one is the 8th one in the series. Does Anne get her shelf? Anne will go on the same shelf as Jane Austen because I think I don't have enough books of either author to put on separate shelves. So, the Blue Castle. A whole bunch of romance. What am I going to do with those? Like, I have some Barbara Metzer, Julianne Long, the Palace of Rose series that I adore. How to Marry a Marquis, this one is by Julia Quinn. Tessa Dare, The Duchess Deal, very, very good. Haley Ann Solomon, A Rag-Mannered Rogue, it was good. Lisa Kleypas, hey, I have classics. Okay, romance will get their shelves, I guess. Romance will go on that particular shelf. The one that you can see underneath, because it is narrower than the others, because the one underneath is the one for the oversized books. So romance, Mary Balogh, Eloisa James, more romance, another romance. This one I did not like. I made a video about that. And some more romance. I will probably have to double stack the romance shelf. That's okay, I can live with that. Because I have some more, and I have some more in the other room. I might as well bring it and place it right away. Romance, and some more, and some more. Let's continue with box number 11. So that means it's the 11th box that I packed. So it's not the number of boxes that I unpacked. At first glance, this appears to be somewhat random books. For me, it's not random, because I know the bookcase where I took them from. So it's going to be fiction, non-fiction, mostly in English, and some travel guidebooks, such as this. Paris, London, top 10 New York. So these ones don't really grow old, in the sense that the Eiffel Tower is still the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre is still the Louvre, even though the opening hours may change and things like that. So these are useful to keep. Quebec City, St. Petersburg, Moscow. And now for the really random stuff. A book about music, a Bill Bryson about England, Murder in Matera, a book that I hated because, because the author looks for her roots basically in Italy, and she finds small, teeny tiny fragments of information, and she creates stories that for which she has absolutely no proof. So again, it's one of these mix of fiction and non-fiction that I just don't like. So that one, it goes on the maybe shelf. The Forger's Spell, about Van Meegeren, who is a painter who fooled the world, but mainly the Nazis. That's the part that we remember. At the end of World War II, so he's a Dutch painter, and at the end of World War II, he was accused of treason for selling Vermeers to the Nazis, and his excuse was wonderful, the most wonderful excuse: they're forgeries. And he was acquitted because he did not sell Vermeers, he sold forgeries. That's really a funny story. This is Late Nights on Air, a Canadian fiction, and then No Visible Bruises. This one is a book I read for the Book 2 prize, but it's a very good one. So sometimes, I think it ended at #2 the year that it was in the finals. So it's about what we don't know about domestic violence can kill us. Very good. Thomas King's a book I need to reread, Green Grass Running Water. Farley Mowat, his memoir about the war. The Deadly Sisterhood by Leonie Frida. I love this book. This is about 6 women who lived during the Italian Renaissance. So during the Renaissance in Italy. So there's Caterina Sforza, Isabella d'Este, Lucrezia Borgia, Lucrezia Tornabuoni, too many syllables. Anyway, she married a Medici. Clarice Orsini, she married a Medici too, and Beatrice d'Este, who married a Sforza. So anyway, so how the girls were from one family and were more or less traded in marriage to other families and the role they were supposed to play, and it's just really, really good. Thomas King, again, A Short History of Indians in Canada. This one is a collection of short stories, so it sounds like fiction, like non-fiction, but it's not, it's fiction. More Thomas King, so this is Dreadful Water. This one is a mystery. The first, Eden Robinson, so Son of a Trickster, the first in the trilogy, and I'm going to start with that. I'm going to have to reorganize the fiction, because the non-fiction section, because at the moment I just have one shelf of random non-fiction and a shelf of Canadian non-fiction, and that's not going to do. For example, I have a couple more non-fiction about Italy, so it would make sense to group them together. And then at some point I'll have a bunch of non-fiction about Russia. It would make sense to group them together. So non-fiction. I'll be there for you. The one about Friends. So this one is a non-fiction about the show Friends. So this one is really random because I have nothing else of the sort. Eden Robinson, Monkey Beach, so another Canadian fiction, and The Stone Angel by Margaret Lawrence, another Canadian non-fiction and a classic. Okay, so I reorganized a little bit the non-fiction shelf. So I separated the war books from the biographies, from the books about languages and literature, from the books, from the Canadian non-fiction. So I've sorted things a little bit. Chances are they will be resorted in one way or another, but at the moment, at least I have, it's not just random. They are a little bit sorted. So let's continue. There's quite good non-fiction in this box. So this is Apollo's Angels by Jennifer Holmans. This is a history of dance, a history of ballet, I should say, just ballet. And on the same topic, well, close, Bolshoi Confidential by Simon Morrison. So a history of the Bolshoi ballet. So it's related, but at the same time, it's not related. A biography of Rasputin by Douglas Smith. That one was very good. Beau Brummel. Oh, that one I found in a little free library just in time for Jane Austen July, and I just loved that biography. It is The Ultimate Dandy by Ian Kelly. So very good. War, How Conflicts Shaped Us by Margaret Macmillan. The Unfolding of Language by Guy Deutscher. So this one's about the history of language. Venice by Peter Ackroyd. So a book about Venice. What do I have here? SPQR by Mary Beard. So a book on ancient history, about history of Rome. Two Brother Cadfael omnibuses. Thomas King, 77 Fragments of a Familiar Ruin, so poems. The Halifax Explosion, Canada's Worst Disaster by Ken Cuthbertson. So this one, this explosion was during the war, 1917, I think. Yes, December 6, 1917. The French munitions ship Mont Blanc and the Norwegian war relief vessel Imo collided in the harbor at Halifax, Nova Scotia. And what the munition ships was carrying was basically just a floating bomb. And it exploded, and at the time, it was the biggest man-made explosion in history. So it remained true until Hiroshima. So it was a disaster. And the last three books in this box, it is The Written World by Martin Puchner. I absolutely love this book. It's a book about books. Because Internet by Gretchen McCullough. This is about how the internet is changing language. And The Case of the Murderous Dr. Cream by Dean Job. So this is a Canadian nonfiction about a mass murderer, not a mass murderer, a serial killer from the 19th century. For a book about a serial killer, it was interesting. It was fun, it was interesting, but it's not unforgettable because at the moment I wouldn't be able to tell you who this man killed, which is bad. I should remember the victims a bit more. Anyway, so that's the end of the box, and it's going to be the end of this video because I think if I add this clip to all the others, it's going to be long enough. And I'm going to start over because I'm going to continue. There's still daylight, so that means I'm unpacking, but it's going to be in a different video. So thank you everyone for watching, especially if you made it this far, and I will see you in the next video, which is going to be more of the same, I think.